Welcome back to Chess Zero to Hero. In episode 2, we covered attack, capture, check, and checkmate. Today we cover the two moves that confuse beginners more than anything else, castling and en passant. After this episode, the rulebook is almost complete. Let's get into it. Part 1. Castling. Castling is a special move involving your king and one of your rooks. It is the only move in chess where you move two pieces at the same time, and the only move where the king travels more than one square. There are two types of castling, kingside and queenside. Kingside castling, the king moves two squares toward the h-file rook. From e1 to g1, the rook jumps over the king and lands on f1. In chess notation, this is written as OO. Queenside castling. The king moves two squares toward the a-file rook from e1 to c1. The rook jumps over and lands on d1. This is written as OOO. Queenside castling moves the rook further. Why castle? Two reasons. First, king's safety. The king is vulnerable in the center of the board where open files and attacking pieces can reach it quickly. Castling tucks the king behind a wall of pawns. Second, rook activation. The rook in the corner is doing nothing. After castling, it moves to the center where it becomes powerful immediately. Most games you should castle early. A king that stays in the center is a target. Now the rules. You cannot castle whenever you feel like it. There are 5 situations where castling is not allowed. Rule 1. The king has moved. Even if the king moved and came back to the same square, castling is no longer allowed. It does not matter that it looks the same. The right to castle is gone. Rule 2. That rook has moved. If your kingside rook moved earlier in the game, you cannot castle kingside. Your queenside rook is unaffected. You can still castle queenside if it has not moved. Rule 3. Your king is currently in check. You cannot castle to escape check. You must deal with the check first by moving the king, blocking, or capturing the attacker. Rule 4. The king would pass through a square that is under attack. When castling kingside, the king travels through f1. If an enemy piece controls f1, you cannot castle kingside, even if g1 is safe. The king cannot pass through danger. Rule 5. The king would land on a square that is under attack. If g1 is controlled by an enemy piece, castling kingside is illegal. You would be moving your king into check. To summarize, you cannot castle if the king has moved, if that rook has moved, if the king is in check, if the king passes through an attacked square, or if the king lands on an attacked square. One more thing. There must be no pieces between the king and the rook. Clear the path first, then castle. Part 2. En Passant. En Passant is the most unusual move in chess. It only happens in one exact situation, and beginners are often convinced it is illegal the first time they see it. It is not. It has been part of the rules for over 500 years. Here is the situation. Your pawn has advanced to the 5th rank. Your opponent moves a pawn 2 squares from its starting position, and it lands directly beside yours. In this position, black's pawn has moved from d7 to d5. 2 squares, landing right next to white's pawn on e5. Normally, a pawn cannot capture a piece directly beside it, but this is the exception. White can capture the black pawn as if it had only moved 1 square. White's pawn moves diagonally to d6, and the black pawn on d5 is removed from the board. This is en passant. Notice, white's pawn does not land on d5 where the black pawn was. It lands on d6, the square the black pawn passed through. Now the most important rule about en passant. You must capture immediately, on the very next move. If you make any other move first, the opportunity is gone forever. It does not carry over. You cannot come back to it 2 moves later. En passant works the same way for black. If white moves a pawn 2 squares, and it lands next to black's pawn on the 4th rank, black has the same right to capture, and the same 1-move window to use it. Why does this rule exist? When pawns could only move 1 square at a time, this capture was never needed. Any pawn moving 1 square would land on a square the enemy pawn could capture normally. When the two-square first move was introduced, En Passant was added to make sure a pawn could not use that extra speed to sneak past a pawn that was controlling the square it should have landed on. It is not a trick, it is not a glitch, it is part of the game. That is episode 3. You now know how to castle, kingside and queenside, and every rule that applies to it. You know what En Passant is, how to execute it, and why you have to act immediately. Stay for the exercises at the end of this video. I have set up castling puzzles and an en passant position for you to solve. Pause, work it out, then watch the solution. In episode 4, we finish the complete rulebook, pawn promotion in full detail, and every type of draw you can encounter. After that, we move into tactics, and the real chess begins. If you are enjoying the series, hit subscribe so you do not miss episode 4. Practice everything from today for free on chess.com. The link is in the description. See you in episode 4.